I have a story long before HIV. I moved to San Francisco as a young woman in 1987 during the middle of the AIDS epidemic, but I never feared AIDS. It wasn't something that frightened me. Eventually, I met a beautiful man from an exotic country called Brazil, and we had been dating for a while when he informed me that he was HIV positive. I did not feel fear. I had no intentions of running. Of course, he thought I would leave him immediately, but I didn't. I was in love and I was ready for the challenge of HIV. Eventually, I became gravely ill and hospitalized for a week, and no one knew what was wrong with me, but I didn't fit the profile. As it turns out, that's when I seroconverted. Although my husband and I knew that we would eventually die, and there was basically no services for heterosexual couples, we had an entrepreneurial spirit, so we opened a pizzeria. We had to keep everything a secret. At that time, people were being fired from their jobs, from their restaurant jobs. We worked the pizzeria for years until my husband could no longer handle the stress of the pizzeria. He became too ill, and he died in 1994. At that time, I became very depressed, knowing that I only had a few years of my own left. I wasn't sure if continuing life was worth the effort. At that time, people were dying very painful deaths from AIDS. But what I did was I took myself to school and I applied. I took classes that I enjoyed, and I made some goals. HIV gives you the opportunity to see life in a very positive way. I saw it as my 10-year window of opportunity to do all the things I wanted to do before I died. So going to school and achieving at least a bachelor's degree was very important to me. I wanted to watch my son grow up, so I gave myself goals. I wanted to see him graduate from junior high school, then I wanted to see him graduate from high school, and then I wasn't able to envision my life long enough to think about my son going to college, getting married, and having children. So the goal was junior high and high school, having a bachelor's degree, and seeing as much of the world as possible. So that's what I did. With the money I borrowed to go to school, I used to travel, and I decided that this was a very important part of my education, seeing other parts of the world, seeing how they live, and hoping that the best part of each culture I could bring home with me and improve my life. There weren't really many services for me as life went on. I handled this disease on my own. I had an excellent doctor, and I saw a therapist, but I didn't do any group therapy, and I didn't know any other women with HIV. It wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 1996, 1998, where I found out that there was a group of heterosexuals south in San Jose, and I was finally able to meet other HIV-positive heterosexuals and slowly befriended some of those folks. Having HIV is a very interesting disease to have, knowing that you will die, preparing for your death, being okay with dying young, but at the same time attempting to live your life to the fullest. As it turned out, I did meet another man with HIV while I was going to school, and what I noticed about the people I began meeting was that our lives, although struggling with having the virus and eventually having drugs that were to save our lives, supposedly, The drugs themselves made people incredibly ill. But overall, the people that I met had very, very full lives. They were cramming as much life into their short lives as possible. HIV gave me the opportunity to actually move into the hospital and care for my husband while he was dying. It gave me direction. It gave me a purpose, the purpose to stay alive, to stay focused on the most important parts of my life, and to let go of those things that just were so insignificant. Overall, having HIV put me on a trajectory that has been a difficult path and yet a very exciting path. Knowing that your life is going to end somehow creates this energy in you that is so much more alive than those who don't have a pressing death sentence hanging over their heads. So as I grow older, I'm part of the generation that is the first group. Actually, I'm the second group that will grow old with AIDS, and I'm at this point in my life looking at going into old age in poverty. And so that's a very scary thing to think about. I worry about homelessness and my inability to keep myself healthy. But becoming an activist and fighting for the rights of elderly with AIDS and bringing it to the public's attention has given me another purpose. So at this point I am again single. I was married for 10 years with an HIV negative man. So I'm starting my life over again as an HIV positive middle-aged woman. And it's interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's interesting the challenges that have been put in front of me, but also the awesome opportunities I've had to meet other long-term survivors and think about how we want our lives to unfold as we age. Having HIV has not been as scary as it might seem from the outside. I've never feared AIDS, and I have never questioned why I have AIDS. And I have never asked myself, why me? I feel the question, why me, is a very inappropriate question, and it's a question that can create confusion, having HIV or any life-threatening disease. I look forward to my future and to see how it's going to unfold as an elderly woman with HIV.